Today on the Reveal Report, we talk about the tragedy of the North Carolina shooting. We also talk about the tragedy of the shooting that took place at the Church of Latter-day Saints in Michigan. We also will talk about how Portland is completely out of control and Trump is wanting to send in military troops to take care of the issues. However, we'll talk about the response from Governor Tina Kotek. And we'll talk about how it's completely radically insane, but it does show us how the radical left thinks. We'll talk about Jimmy Kimmel being back and his ratings dropping. And of course, just out of fun, we'll talk about President Trump having a conversation with the head of Somalia on whether he would like to have Ilhan Omar back. Welcome back to the Revealed Report. I'm your host, John Wilson. Let's get into it. If you like the content of today's episode and you would like to help further our mission, do us a favor, smash the subscribe button or gently tap it. It all works the same. Give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and share us with somebody else. Thank you for your support. I want to start off today's episode by saying that America is suffering. The moral spirit of America is suffering from moral and spiritual decay. And because of that, it is resulting in perilous times. Violence is on the rise, rampage, and all types of hatred is being spilled out from social media into even violent actions that are taking place in communities today. Now, we can talk about guns, and the truth of the matter is I am absolutely against a gunless civilization because in order to protect our freedom, we need two main things. Number one, which is the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights, the right of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom of the press. Number two, the right to bear arms. Every Marxist regime always exercised two ways to pull the nation apart and to begin to bring it under their radical tyranny. Number one, tried to take away their thoughts and their ability to speak, and especially take away their religion. And we find this when Joseph Stalin and Vladimir Lenin went into Russia. They began to try to suppress speech, and they began to take away the ability for people to go to church publicly. The church was ran underground, but also not only did they say we want to take away people's ideas and begin to silence them, that only they could speak what the communist dictators would allow them to speak, but also they wanted a unarmed civilization because they believe that it took two key things. You got to unarm the civilization and you have to take away their ability to speak. And if you do these two things, you can suppress people under your tyranny. China did this too under the communist revolution of Mao Zedong. They went in and they began to tear down the old statues and deface the old historical monuments. They began to take out the old literature. They began to burn the Bible. They began to change the culture. They began to radicalize the youth against the older generation. They began to plow down the houses of worship, and they began to unarm the population. You see, when you do not have the ability to speak and you do not have the right to bear arms, the government can begin to take over. And so I know there is gun tragedy, and I understand that very well, and I hate it vehemently. But the reason why we can't let the radical left use that as a way to try to take away the right to bear arms is because this is the same group that also wants to take away the freedom of speech, that wants to suppress your speech. And they want to take these two things away because they lean towards Marxist principles. And that's what allows people to come under the boot of socialistic, communistic ideology that in the end will allow us to will no longer allow us to go to our church publicly, to have public worship. It is suppress our churches. Our churches are underground. Just go back to the COVID-19 madness. Who did they come after? Our churches and middle-class businesses. You see, they used all of the corporations that they could get in bed with wokeism, that they would go woke overnight, and they would push all types of radicalized ideas, and they would come down on churches and shutter the doors of our churches, and also they would also close up middle-class businesses. It had Marxism written all over it. You see, if we let the radical left have their way and use their deceit to get us to buy into the lies and erode our country away little by little and take our rights away, eventually what will happen is we'll become just like these third world countries that have tragedy in their history where they fell under communist and Marxist rules and dictators. And so we must never buy into the lie that we must unarm the population. That is a complete fallacy. Do we have a gun issue? Yes, and we can talk about that. I don't think we should be naive on the right to say we don't have an issue. But at the same time, we should not buy into the lies of the left and become an unarmed population that also allows the people to get in office that will suppress our speech and try to shutter the doors of our churches. And so we must be balanced in between these. But the true matter is, the problem is more than a gun. We can talk about all of that. See, the radical left thinks they can legislate all the problems away as long as they pass enough laws, as long as they have enough court rulings, they can make all the evil go away. But the truth of the matter is, evil is not a byproduct of social injustice or cultural political ideas itself. Political ideology and cultural issues and social injustices and violence and all the harm is a byproduct of sin. And see, the radical left has flipped this upside down. Even if you go back into the 1800s, if you go back to Harvard University before it became radicalized with its ideologies today, John Harvard was actually established in Harvard University. And I believe I got his first name right. I should know. My name's John. But Harvard was originally established as a school for clergy. It was a Christian school, and it was also trying to teach basic grammar and things like that. Unitarians, and we can talk about the Unitarian movement and how they're not the same as the type of movement that I'm a part of, but the Unitarian movement come through, and what happened was in like the mid 1800s, they began to take over Harvard College, and instead of making it really about Christianity and the moral gospel of coming out of sin and living right before the Lord, they began to turn it into a social gospel. And they began to preach and teach that all of the evil of the world is a byproduct of social injustices instead of being a byproduct of sin. And because the radical left tend to be humanists and they push this ideology, they want to look at the actions and feel like they can legislate it from man's rule, that they can take a pen and write it down and get a stamp of approval, and that's going to somehow legislate love in people's heart. But the truth of the matter is, America is not suffering from a legislative issue itself. Yes, legislation is a byproduct of the issue, but the core fundamental problem with America is we have a sickness, we have a disease in the soul and the spirit of America. Not everybody, but as a nation, we have digressed away from God. We used to be a nation in God we trust, that we have certain inalienable rights endowed to us by our Creator God. We believed in biblical fundamental principles, that we must live based on 10 commandments, and this can only be held together by a virtuous, a moral, and just people. And so America was established on biblical Christian principles, but it has digressed away from that. And now we find that man feels like they can fix all of man's problems by just writing enough laws. But what happens over time is we write laws so much that now we don't have any freedom. And there has been a lie from the radical left that people will cough up their freedoms for safety. And so the radical left is always trying to be out for your safety, supposedly. And so as they say they're out for your safety, American people will cough up their freedoms. They'll cough up their liberties. They'll cough up their rights, all in the name of safety. And at some point, we must stop and take an examination of the proper balance of this. Can we secure safety so much that we give up all our freedoms and rights? Now, look, there are people that can't get off their cell phone. They can't get off their cell phone. They'll walk across intersections on their cell phone and get hit by a vehicle. But I don't think we need a legislative law that says you can't use your phone while you're going across the intersection. We need to teach people to stay off your phone and pay attention to your surroundings. That's just one example of how we can't legislate away all the issues. Yes, we do need some form of legislation. Yes, I do believe that legislation should be based off the principles of God's word. Yes, we do need government. God is for government. But yet we don't need a big government ran by men and women who feel like they can legislate all the issues away. And so before we even talk about gun violence, why don't we talk about the moral, spiritual sickness of our nation? Our nation is suffering, and the spiritual moral sickness of our nation is being played out and realized in mental health issues. Now, we can talk about mental health issues, and we should, but I believe that mental health issues is a byproduct of a spiritual decay, a moral decay in our nation. And so, at some point, if we're going to restore the soul of our nation, we need to go beyond legislation. We need to go beyond mental health awareness. We need to go back to an understanding that something is sick in the soul and the spirit of America. And the truth of the matter is, you can get rid of guns, but you're not going to get rid of murder. You're not going to get rid of political assassination and violence if that's in the heart of the people. If that's in the heart of leftist radicals, then that's what's going to be played out, whether they have to use a knife, a stone, or something else. All it will do is unarm the civilization so then we can have a big government that can suppress us under their rule. And so this is why we cannot buy into the radical leftist lies, no matter how appealing they are. Now, we do have two tragedies. We have the North Carolina shooting from really a deranged, mentally sick, and obviously morally sick individual who was supposedly suffering from PTSD, former military veteran. And I really grieve at that because most of my family on my dad's side was military. Most of them were military background, and we covered pretty much all the branches, and we covered wars. And I had a younger brother served a term in Kandahar, Afghanistan, and I am absolutely pro our military, and I thank God for the men and women that give their lives to protect our freedoms. And it's very tragic because I have noticed those that have come back from the Iraq and Afghanistan war have really suffered. They suffered internally really bad, and the suicide rate was very high among them, and PTSD was very high. And I don't know exactly all the in and outs that caused that with that war. It was there was there was a lot of really hard to grip with your mind activity in that war that took place that really our troops have suffered from. And so I have a great burden to pray for those that have come back from wartime. And so I hate that this man struggled so much with that. And so I know it's easy to demonize him as a monster, and his acts were monstrous, but it really grieves me that people can go that far because they're suffering internally. And my prayer, my hope is somehow America understands that we have to get our focus right because these people are suffering. And I would to God that we somehow reach them before they go so far that they think that the only way out is to pick up a gun and do harm to others. Now there are some in the left media that's painting this as a far right person. And let me just tell you, on this platform, we're just going to be honest with you. We're going to be integrable. If somebody on the right side causes violence, we're going to come out and we're not going to hide that fact. We're going to say it's wrong and we're going to condemn it. We're not going to celebrate it like the radical left does. We're going to condemn it because the true heart of the right does not promote violence. But however, and this is not biased commentary, this is just being honest. If it comes out and we truly see that he is on the right, we'll say it on this platform and we will condemn it immediately, as we're already condemning the actions. But from what I can see, I don't see clear-cut details that he was actually on the right. What I do see is that there was mental derangement that was taking place. Something was broken internally with him. Because if you look at the lawsuits that he filed with the state, they don't even make sense. On one hand, he's saying that he's filed a lawsuit against his church and against the state. And part of it's because of them joining together with white supremacists that come against him because he's a heterosexual straight male, joining with the LGBTQ2 plus community. And so it's just wacky things that can make him sound like he's on the right and things that can make him sound like he's on the left, which makes me think that he was just deranged. There was something broken on the inside of him tragically. And that resulted in him tragically taking the lives of others. Now, if it comes out that they have proof that he was on the right, we'll say that. I just want you to know we're going to be straight up with you and we'll condemn it. And you know what? At some point, if there's a breaking point of people on the right and they're rising back up, that unfortunately that would go to play out what I've warned in previous episodes, that if we're not careful, this can happen. There's a dangerous undercurrent in our world, and the right has been very patient. But could there come a breaking point? I'm concerned there could be, and possibly the only people that will make it through without being violent will be those that are truly grounded in biblical conviction that becomes martyrs for their faith. And so that is a concern I have, and I'll be completely transparent with you, but I do not see the evidence at this point right now. And we're not going to rush to conclusion like so many media outlets that just have their biases. We want to give you truth. Right at this moment, I don't see the evidence that he was really on the left or the right. So I'm not condemning the left necessarily for the actions of this man either, other than the fact that I do believe the radical left is causing the temperature to be hot. And because of that, violence is rampaging, and I will condemn their ideology. The ideologies of the left does tend to radicalize people, and it does take people from biblical convictions and understanding that we're made in the image of God. And so therefore we don't murder our brother. We don't murder our sisters of humanity, all born from Adam, regardless of your race, your creed, whatever you are. We all are born from the same lineage. Now, we do teach of being born again to become the lineage of Jesus Christ, but yet we still honor all men and love the brotherhood because we're all made in the image of God. So we condemn violence like this. And so if it does come out that he was on the right, I'll try to be the first one to tell you. Without jumping to conclusions, I'll try to be the first one to tell you. But just to give you the bare bones honesty, the raw truth that I see as of right now, I don't see where he fits the left or the right. I just see somebody that's mentally deranged. Now, I'm not going to be like far right conservative media just wants to jump on it to use it against the radical left. I'm not going to do that, other than the fact I will say that the radical left has heated up the temperature and they have promoted violence. And so we do have a violent culture right now. We have a death cult culture from the radical left, and even assassin culture from the radical left. So I do believe that they help cause the issues of today. But to say that this one individual fit the category left or right, I can't do that. I'm not even going to try to do that. There's even another tragedy in Grand Blanc, Michigan. I hope I said that right, Grand Blanc, Michigan, at the Church of Latter-day Saints, where there was a shooting and there was a fire set that killed lives. Now, let me just say this. I actually have a major problem with so many people that's under the banner and the guise of Christianity. And I heard Glenn Beck this morning, and it was very tragic. And I was involved in communications with somebody through the Glenn Beck post, where you can post and make your comments and on their YouTube page and engage in some conversations here, because I'm not a part of the Church of Latter-day Saints. I'm not Mormon. And I have a far different belief. However, I believe that we can discuss our differences, and we can even have wholesome dialogue and debate respectfully, and even passionately, but respectfully, and treat each other like human beings. I believe in the table reasoning. I believe in the table discussion. I believe that we should all have our ability to come to the table and discuss and debate and have dialogue and respect one another. I always say that I'm trying to tear down ideas, not people. I don't believe in violence to people. But when I say tear down ideas, I don't mean do it by ugly force. I mean to be the sharpest, to be the most honest, the most truthful, the one that has his facts together, the one that can bring the argument to the table and win. That's how we win. And you know why we need people of various types at the table of reasoning and debate and dialogue? It's because they make us go search more. They make us pray more. That difference of opinion and difference of understanding can help sharpen us. That's why I have friends that don't see everything exactly like I do. I have people on all sides of the aisle. I even have friends that are Democrats. I have friends that are atheists. I have friends that are not straight. And you know what? I love them and they love me. And we disagree with each other's worldviews. We disagree with each other's principles and the way we conduct ourselves and our ideas and our thoughts. That's okay. That's the beauty of America. The beauty of America is that we have the freedom to pursue what we believe. Now, there is a ideological war that takes place to see who's going to have the greatest influence over education, the greatest influence over college universities, the greatest influence in politics, and that's okay. It's okay to try to win. It's okay to try to win ideologically, politically, and spiritually without resorting to violence. I tell my boys, when I have young boys, I have 5 children, beautiful children. They're great. They're wonderful. They're my prized possession. I'm married to my best friend and my wife, and we have 5 beautiful children. But my boys are all boys. I mean, they can get riled up and they start fighting, and I constantly trying to teach them, look, you have to come to the table reasoning and dialogue and debate, and you got to discuss with one another. The moment you resort to hatred, the moment you resort to a violent act, it's weakness. Violence is a sign of weakness. You see, the Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth. Meekness is not weakness. Meekness is when you have the power to do it, but you suppress it and you bring it under control. Jesus was meek. He had the power to eliminate every one of them, but yet by his own will, he stayed on the cross. Meekness is not weakness. It's actually the most powerful thing there is. When you have the ability to do it, but you suppress that by your own ability, or we believe by the help of God, by God's Spirit helping us bring that into subjection. That is strength, and that is power. When we resort to yelling and screaming and just labeling, and now look, there is a form of labeling that is right. But when we just resort to trying to tear one another down, and I believe the biggest reason we're doing that today is because we can hide behind the tech veil and we can do it on social media apart from one another. Charlie Kirk was going into college universities and having dialogue and debate with them because he knew that when we talk to one another, we see that, look, we're both human beings. We both have lives. We both have families. We both have things that we're involved in. And we see the humanity of one another. But when we hide behind the tech veil, we begin to lose the sight of one another's humanity, and we begin to treat each other like animals, and sometimes like Christy Gnome dogs. And I like Christy Gnome. That's just a fun pun joke. I like Christy Gnome. But anyways, that we begin to resort to violence, and that's weakness. That's weakness. We can come to the table and ideologically debate, and we can politically debate, and we can our social economic ideas and how the construct of economy should work. We can debate all of that, and we should be pursuing to win our arguments at the table so that we have the greater influence over politics and over education and over every institution in America. There's nothing wrong with that. I always say to the best one be the winner. But that doesn't mean we resort to violence. And so I want to say that I was deeply grieved today because I'm not a part of the Latter-day Saints. I'm not a part of the Mormon. My teaching actually teaches against their teachings. However, their teachings probably do the same with mine, and that's okay. But they're not trying to harm me, and I'm not trying to harm them. We can come to the table and disagree at a table. And guess what we can do afterwards? Shake hands. Be friendly and kind and respectful and decent to one another. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to give up the convictions we believe in. At the same time, we don't have to resort to violence with one another. And so I was very grieved because I seen people under the so-called banner of Christianity saying that they were happy, they were okay with the assault, the murder of these people at the Church of the Latter-day Saints and the burning down. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. Vengeance is of the Lord. If something's wrong, God will take vengeance. We don't have to try to do that. If something is truly wrong, then we put it in God's hands, not in our own hands. If you really don't believe in what they're teaching in that, and I don't know the complete motivation, and I'll dive into a little bit of that here in a moment. But if we don't believe in what somebody's teaching, we can debate that. We can try to have dialogue. We can try to influence, but we can't resort to violence. We must condemn the violent nature of our nation today. And I was speaking to somebody from who's a Mormon, and they have a little bit of problem with the banner of a lot of mainstream Christianity because the hatred that they're getting. And I told this individual that, look, I don't agree with all their teachings, and they don't agree with all of mine. But please don't let fake Christianity put a blanket on all of us, because we don't rejoice in that. We grieve. These are human lives that were made in the image of God. And to all, I've sat down and I've actually been involved in doctrinal religious debates with Mormons, two Mormon missionaries. I remember in the first church I was in, my pastor and I had the opportunity to sit down in closed session with a mediator in a library room and have a debate with them. And I loved it. I enjoyed every minute of it. And afterwards, you know what I did? I shook their hands. I shook their hands. Do I agree? No. Do they agree with me? No. And that's okay, because you know what? It challenges us to study, to pray, to know what we believe in without resorting to violence. Now, I did see, I think it was the Daily Mail, yeah, Daily Mail, that originally put out an article I seen that painted the picture that the Michigan shooting was somebody from the far right community, I guess Trump loving and so-called patriotic. And but when I went back to find that article, it was gone, which usually tells me that somebody jumped on it, began to put something out there, and then had to pull it back, and usually doesn't when I identified. And if I'm miscategorized, allegedly, if I'm miscategorizing on Daily Mail, I sincerely apologize. But that's just what I seen last night. I seen the article. I can't find it today unless it's buried. And if it's buried, hey, I'll be the first one to confess I'm wrong, okay? But I can't find it, which usually means that somebody rushed out there to try to be the first to be out there, to be on the edge, to be the cutting edge in the news media, and then had to reel it back in. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I completely don't know. I condemn the act either way. If it was somebody, it seems like they were mentally deranged too. It seemed like there was some absolute mental derangement, and it does look like they were absolutely going against the Latter-day Saint Church. They were it was religious violence, and so we can disagree on we can disagree on everything, but we do have the freedom of religion in the United States of America, and so we have to at least respect that. And so I wanted to let them know, and I sent out the message to Glenn Beck, who's a Mormon, and I sent out the message to, the followers of Glenn Beck, that I'm very sorry, and this does not represent all of us. They do not represent all of us, and we're praying for them. And I would rather sit down at a table, have friends, and drink coffee and discuss and dialogue and debate and get along and help one another. We can have our disagreements. If we're going to influence anybody, it's not going to be through hate. It's going to be by love. And you hear on this network, I talk about a lot of things, and I vehemently attack evil ideologies. But also, we've been able to help people from those communities or those far leftist ideologies, that we've been able to help them. And there's people that absolutely love us. They have completely opposite views of ours. That doesn't mean I'm going to be silent. Doesn't mean I'm not going to speak out against ideologies I think are wrong, but I'm not going to promote evil and hatred and violence. That's something we're not going to do on the Revealed Radio Network. That's not our principles. We love humanity. We even love our neighbor, and we love our enemies, even as ourselves. And so I'm praying for those that have been affected by this shooting in North Carolina. I'm praying for those that have been affected by the shooting in Michigan. And I'm very sorry for those situations. I really can't put the category of this man was in the left or the right yet. I want more evidence to come out. But like I said before, if he was on the right and it was some so-called Trump supporter, which is really not, he's not MAGA. I can tell you that. That's not who the conservatives are. And Trump came out and condemned it. And he's really wanting to crack down on it because it's another violent attack against religious movements. And so I'm glad that Trump's there to be able to handle that. And so if it's somebody who claims to be conservative, we denounce them. Okay? We denounce them. We condemn that. I don't have all the evidence yet. I'm not going to rush it out there. We're not going to be like the mainstream media, just going to want clickbait at the expense of truth. Moving on from that, though, Jimmy Kimmel is back, but has a 70% ratings drop. But let me tell you the difference between the right and the left. You see, Jimmy Kimmel's ratings dropped because he began to just spread out a lie and was saying that the assassin of Charlie Kirk was a far right killing the lesser far right, which was a complete lie. That's why on this network, we're not going to rush that out. As you can see, Jimmy Kimmel's paying the price for it, and rightfully so. And so we don't want to fall into the same trap. The difference between the actual true conservative right and the left is we grieve at the loss of lives, especially under hideous acts like this. The left, on the other hand, they will celebrate it as long as it's their political opposition. And we see Ilhan Omar went out and stoked the flames of that as she began to really blame Charlie Kirk for his own assassination, his own murder. And President Trump, while in a conversation with everything he has going on, and a conversation with the head of Somalia, he asked if they would be willing to take Ilhan Omar back. And supposedly, allegedly, the response was, I don't want her. We don't blame you. We don't really want her either. We're praying that there be a conversion. But if not, we don't really want her either. Trump, can you maybe bargain a deal and see if you can maybe talk the head of Somalia to maybe, come on, maybe use a tariff? It might be worth it. Anyways, going back to the rest of the news and headlines, Portland is completely out of control. Absolutely out of control. I mean, during COVID, they were absolutely out of control. You see Chaz, I think I'm saying that right, Chaz, they were burning down the city, setting up camp, trying to build their own little communities, and they were just nuking down the city. And there was one problem after another. And so Trump is actually wanting to deploy military troops to crack down on it, like he was doing in D.C., like he's doing in Chicago, try to get the crime rate down. And even the citizens who didn't even vote for Trump that wanted Calamity Kami Harris is actually saying, help us, help us, help us. But may I tell you, this should be a lesson learned for you. Don't vote the people in that believe in defund the police. Don't vote the people in that believe in violent rioting, who believe in stoking the flames of confusion and chaos so that they can heat up things in the streets to use it for their political ploy. Quit voting for the radical left. Come to our side. The tent is open for you. Come to the side that's more civilized. And so these were the people that voted for, by large for Calamity Kami Harris, and now they're saying, Trump, please help us, help us, help us, help us. And now there are some on the conservative right side of the aisle that says no, they should deal with it because of their persuasion to vote for Calamity Kami Harris. I'm going to say I'm not on that side. I understand. I understand the sentiments. I totally get it. But look, these are human beings that are suffering because of a radicalized, out of control Antifa and people on the radical left, and they're causing harm to our fellow Americans. I understand that they chose it, but hey, I want us to show that we're the side of right, and we're the side that what really truly cares about you. The radical left says they care about you. They don't care about you. They just want to use you for their own purposes, for their own set agenda. We truly do care about you. We'll set our agenda aside to try to care for human beings. And we do have agenda. We want America to come back to God. But yet you see Governor Tina Kotek is now saying, no, we don't need Trump. We can handle it. We believe in the rule of law. Really? It really shows you're doing a great job at showing how much you believe in the rule of law. Oh, no, we can handle this. Really? Because you haven't been able to handle it since 2019 and probably even before that. You're doing a really great job. So we don't buy your lie that you believe in this. We believe that the left has no problem with lawlessness. Really, they don't. Their ideology supports lawlessness, and the fruit of that is shown. You can judge the tree by its fruit, and they don't have a problem with lawlessness. That's why their cities are broke out with it. And so I'm praying for the president. I'm praying for those that have been affected by the shooting in North Carolina and Michigan. Our hearts go out for you. To the Church of Latter-day Saints, I'm not a Mormon. I'm not a part of the Church of Latter-day Saints. I have a total different view, but I just want you to know that our prayers are with you. We're sorry for these hideous acts that are taking place. America, we really do need restoration of our soul. We are suffering from a spiritual illness that is causing mental illness and radicalized violence. America, I love you. God bless you.